Hi everybody, welcome to English Digest. I'm Pat.
I'm Leah.
And we're going to dive into our literature article today by checking out Alan Moore's Watchmen and finding out how it redefined comic book superheroes. So superhero stories have been kind of hard to escape these last sort of 15 years or so.
Yeah, for sure.
Ever since with the Batmans and then the Marvel and the
X-Men,
DC.
crazy times.
Are you a fan or just kind of dip in and out?
I'm predominantly a fan since I grew up with Star Wars, which is not the same thing, of course, but I'm predominantly a fan. But I've also been a bystander because I've watched my brother be really into all of the alternate universes. And then I've watched my children kind of follow along and get into quite a bit more than I could, Spider-Man and Batman and everything.
Yeah, I was following the Avengers and the Marvel series up until Endgame, the fourth one. And after that, they've gone in so many different directions with new characters and TV shows and everything else. I don't have the time to keep up.
This is the problem, right? You can live in that alternate universe if you don't watch out. It's enjoyable.
But a lot of it is complex, it is difficult, and people love the stories. And one of the reasons for that is something that happened like 40-odd years ago when a guy called Alan Moore wrote Watchmen. So let's read through the first day of the article, the first part, which is going to be about the story itself. And then later on, we're going to explore kind of how Watchmen changed the game. So let's check out the first part. Alan Moore's Watchmen is a complex and multi-layered graphic novel that takes place in an alternative version of the US during the 1980s. Set in a world where superheroes exist, the story unfolds against the background of an impending nuclear war between the US and the Soviet Union. The plot centers on a group of retired and semi-retired superheroes known as the Watchmen. When one of their own, the comedian, is brutally murdered, another hero named Rorschach, known for his uncompromising moral code, begins to investigate the crime. As Rorschach digs deeper into the mystery, aided by the tech genius Night Owl, he uncovers a conspiracy that threatens the lives of his fellow superheroes. The narrative explores the personal lives, conflicts, and psychological complexities of the various characters. Dr. Manhattan, a former scientist who was transformed into a godlike being, struggles with his detachment from humanity, while second-generation hero Silk Spectre navigates complicated relationships with both her parents and her fellow heroes. Ozymandias, a former hero-turned-successful businessman, harbors a grand plan to prevent global destruction. As the story progresses, tensions rise between the superheroes, and they are forced to confront their own beliefs, flaws, and motivations. Some find themselves on the wrong side of the law they are supposed to uphold. The central question emerges: what makes a hero? Moore's storytelling is enriched with hidden details, flashbacks, and subplots, weaving together a web of moral ambiguity, political intrigue, and philosophical introspection. The narrative builds towards an earth-changing revelation and a morally ambiguous ending that challenges traditional notions of heroes and morality.
Okay, everybody, so we're going to dive right in and look at the first sentence, and that is, Alan Moore's Watchmen is a complex and multi-layered graphic novel that takes place in an alternate version of the U.S. during the 1980s. There's already a lot to look at there. But I want to start with Alan Moore. Alan Moore is quite an interesting fellow. He has a number of pseudonyms that he also goes by, like Jill DeRay and Kurt Weill. And I'm just going to do a small, weird redirect there. There's another Kurt Weill with a K who is a musician. And if you haven't had a chance yet, check out his song Exploding Stones. Back to our story, Alan Moore's Watchmen. So Watchmen is the series that we're going to be looking at, the graphic novel, right? And it is not just a basic, easy-to-read graphic novel. It's complex and multi-layered. So there's quite a lot going on in the story, not just, well, A goes to B and the story's over. It's A, C, D, Q, R, Z, and we don't know where we are.
Yeah, back around to A again.
And it's a graphic novel.
Yeah, so we often think of a graphic novel as being a really complex comic book, one that has all the level of detail, characterization, interesting plot as a novel. It's just told through pictures.
As a beginning, a middle, an end.
Yeah, not necessarily in the order you'd expect in this case. By the way, you will notice that I will usually say complex, and Leah says complex.
Right.
Absolutely fine. It's just a difference between British and American pronunciation.
And going into graphic novels, too, just another one to mention that has a really good Netflix series. It's a little bit scary, so if you get scared easily, don't watch it. But Lock and Key, L-O-C-K-E and Key. And that's another graphic novel that's out there. Graphic things can also be very vivid. So it makes sense that a graphic novel has a lot of vivid storylines in it. And it takes place. So the setting of this particular graphic novel is where? In an alternative version of the U.S. Well, that's really interesting. So it's not the U.S. in the 1980s, it's an alternative version, which is very popular in a lot of comic books that are out there. It's like this alternate universe. But here we have an alternate U.S., and it's during the 1980s.
And it's set in a world where superheroes exist, of course. The story unfolds against the background of an impending nuclear war between the US and the Soviet Union, which was pretty much a reality in the sort of late 70s and into the 80s.
Yeah, it ended in 1991, actually.
Yeah, the Cold War. So the story unfolds. That means it starts there and it gradually gets bigger. That's how the events of the plot play out. So this sentence is really telling you this is the world with the story. The US and the Soviet Union, there may be a war. We describe it as an impending, which means it looks very likely to happen in the near future.
At any moment.
Yeah, tensions are rising, threats are being made, it's really difficult. People are in the streets kind of talking, hey, have you heard, what's going to happen? And the Soviet Union, of course, is Russia and the countries around it under the communist rule as it was until the early 1990s.
Right, that was when I was mentioning the 1991, because then it became the Commonwealth of Independent States, or CIS, which took some of it, and then there were also some independent ones from there as well. The plot centers on a group of retired and semi-retired superheroes known as the Watchmen. So they're not, superheroes in the biggest part of their life, like right in the prime of their life. These guys have already done their job, and they're either retired, so they are no longer working, or they are semi-retired, which is what a lot of people tend to do. They take the odd job after they retire just to kind of keep their brain, alert, or to get a little money in their pockets. So these superheroes are retired or semi-retired, and they are known as what? The Watchmen.
One thing we don't mention here is there was actual laws in this comic book world to outlaw superheroes. Yeah, some of them are government superheroes.
Kind of like X-Men as well,
Yeah,
right?
The Comedian is one of these. We'll mention him.
Okay.
But if so, you either have to be a government superhero with a license, or you're like an outlaw illegal superhero.
So you're kind of controlled as a superhero.
Yeah,
How
so
strange.
that's already adding another level of complications to this superhero story. So we've then got when one of their own, meaning when one member of this group, the Watchmen, and this member is the Comedian, is brutally murdered, another hero named Rorschach, known for his uncompromising moral code, begins to investigate the crime. So Rorschach is one of these outlaw superheroes who's not working for the government. He has an uncompromising moral code. So he's got his own beliefs of what's right, what's wrong, what should be done and what shouldn't be, and he will not bend. He will not make compromises. He will not make deals or work with the government. No, he's going to do it his way, and if that breaks laws and if that maybe hurts people, that's how he does it.
I have a little side note on that. A lot of times in comic books and graphic novels, the names of the characters have an extra meaning or have a playful way to be written, as another one coming up soon. With the Rorschach, there's a Rorschach test, right? And that test is a way that people can look at your personality or your moral code. So it's very interesting that this particular character is known for his uncompromising moral code. So it's like he set the test. It's not always the case that there is a real connection here, but given the character of Alan Moore, the writer, I kind of think that it's likely that he has double meanings in a lot of these names of his characters.
Yeah, and in fact, Rorschach, his mask is a Rorschach test that changes depending on who's looking at it.
Okay.
Like, this is the kind of levels of symbolism that you find in this book.
Right, and they said it's very complex, so it's going to be there. As Rorschach digs deeper into the mystery, aided by the tech genius Night Owl, he uncovers a conspiracy that threatens the lives of his fellow superheroes. So again, we have Night Owl, not spelled N-I-G-H-T, but N-I-T-E, which is playful, and he's a tech genius, which if you think of people who are really into using their computers are going to be up really, really late at night anyway. So if you are a night owl, you're somebody who likes to stay up late at night. Going back to the beginning, so Rorschach is looking into what happened to the comedian, right? And the night owl is helping him, and he uncovers a conspiracy. A conspiracy is something where when people plot to do something often bad against other people, they conspire to make a plan that will do damage to other people.
Okay, we're going to take a moment right now to listen to our Chinese teacher, and then we will continue the article when we come back.
Hello everyone, 我是派老师。今天讲解的是12月26号 Unit 15, How Alan Moore's Watchmen Redefined Comic Book Superheroes. 这是第一天的课程。这个单元介绍的是 Alan Moore's Watchmen, 艾伦·摩尔所写的守护者。喜欢漫威英雄系列的听众听到应该不觉得陌生，而在原著图像小说当中，守护者里面的超级英雄不止一位，他们也不是只是单纯在惩奸除恶而已，里面的人物个性都相当立体，故事情节复杂又有层次感。阅读完这个单元介绍，老师建议大家可以试着去把原著找来看看。好，我们一起来看学习重点吧。请看第一段第一个句子，请同学注意到的是 be 动词之后 a complex and multi-layered graphic novel， 所以 Watchmen 原来是图像小说，这个图像小说相当复杂 complex， 而且有很多层次 multi-layered。 好，请特别注意的是 multi-layered 这是一个复合形容词，数量的字像 1, 2, 3， 那这里 multi 指的就是多嘛，在加了一个连结号之后呢，再加个名词，这名词后面呢要加上 ed 才构成复合形容词。比方说独眼的鹿，那鹿呢的眼睛其中一眼被猎人射伤了，所以变成只有剩一眼，独眼的鹿我们就会说 one-eyed E-Y-E-D one-eyed deer。 好，再来请同学看到第二个句子，第二个句子在介绍守护者他的故事背景 set in a world， 这个 set 那当然就是我们知道整个故事的背景设定在什么地方，在什么样的世界呢？这个世界里 superheroes exist， 请同学注意到 world 后面我们用关系副词 where， 在这个世界是有超级英雄的。The story unfolds against the background。 好，故事展开了，动词我们用 unfold。 背景是怎么样？整个故事的背景 against the background， 原来当时呢美苏之间要爆发核战了，一触即发 impending， 那就指即将到来，一触即发的。同学会不会发现到 impending 其实蛮常出现的，不过呢后面通常呢都不是太令人愉快的事情哦，像 impending war， 对吧？即将爆发的战争。好，那再来我们看到第二段第一个句子，讲到故事，小说也好，电影也好，都有一个很重要的元素，就是剧情 plot P-L-O-T。 这部小说 这漫画等于是图像小说，它的情节是围绕在什么？这个 plot 就是情节，围绕在 centers on 就围绕在这一群称为守护者的超级英雄。那再来，请同学看到第3个句子，那其中有一位英雄，他是非常的坚守自己的道德原则，他叫罗夏。他呢想要去调查他的这个朋友笑匠被谋杀了嘛，他就去调查整个案件。He digs deeper into the mystery。好，所以深入调查 dig deeper into， 那它就是深入调查的意思。请同学特别注意到的是逗点之后的这一个分词构句 aided by， 就表示他得到了什么人的协助。
We'll be back after a short break. Welcome back, everyone. Let's pick up the article in the next paragraph. The narrative explores the personal lives, conflicts, and psychological complexities of the various characters. A narrative, it can just be a synonym for the word story,
right.
the events of the plot. But the word narrative also means the way in which something is told. So a first-person narrative is a story told from the point of view of the person in the story. I saw this, I did this. A narrative that starts in the middle you get right into the story, and then maybe you go back later in the story to learn about how the story began. So it's not just a story, it's a way of telling a story, which is key to the way Moore writes his story. You kind of start in the middle and then learn some backstory later.
Yeah, and what we talk about here is Dr. Manhattan. And who is he? Well, he is a former scientist who was transformed into a godlike being and struggles with his detachment from humanity, while second-generation hero Silk Spectre navigates complicated relationships with both her parents and her fellow heroes. That's a long sentence. So just going back, we're going to talk about the fun with names here. Dr. Manhattan, he is a former scientist, and he's got godlike qualities now. Guess what? Manhattan Project, maybe, around that general period of time. If you've seen the movie Oppenheimer, where they're talking about the Manhattan Project and the creation of the atomic bomb, well, maybe that's where this name came from. He's a former scientist, right? And he is struggling with his detachment from humanity. So he doesn't feel a connection to humanity. He feels removed from humanity. Maybe he was close to people before, but now he's like, yeah, I can't connect anymore.
Yeah, he can actually be in multiple places and times at once.
Oh, fun.
So he really can't understand the humans and their emotions as well as he used to.
Okay.
So he's dealing with that. And then we've got this second-generation hero, Silk Spectre.
So not one of the originals, the second generation.
Yeah, which means her parents were heroes, and now she's one too. She is the second generation of her family. She's actually Silk Spectre too. Her mother was the original Silk Spectre.
Okay.
And she's navigating complicated relationships with both her parents and her fellow heroes. So to navigate means to find one's way, and the implication is it's not easy.
Right.
This is a difficult kind of journey through difficult areas, stuff that's going to challenge you and test you.
We talk about navigating your way through college,
Yes.
which means you're learning how to be alone by yourself for the first time, meeting all these different people, having all these social times together, and also going to school and learning stuff.
Yeah.
As we follow on, we have Ozymandias, a former hero turned successful businessman who harbors a grand plan to prevent global destruction. Again, we have a background connection to this. There is a poet, Percy Bysshe Shelley, who wrote Ozymandias about the downfall of human society, right? So he's an interesting possible connection to this poet's story that he wrote.
Yeah, as we'll find out in day 2, there's a lot of myths, literature, a whole load of references that gets pulled in here.
Right.
And we've already mentioned like Rorschach, Dr. Manhattan, Ozymandias, all these references just in this group of characters.
Just this group, yeah, so it's fun.
Yeah, so as the story progresses, tensions rise between the superheroes. So they're not all on the same page here. They're not all agreeing about what should be done. And they're forced to confront their own beliefs, flaws and motivations. So someone's flaw is a problem that they have, maybe something they can't do. It could be a blind spot that they have, something they always seem to get wrong or never notice. It's usually a bad part or a part about your character that you're not particularly keen on. It maybe holds you back in certain circumstances. You're too trusting. You don't trust people enough. Both could be flaws. You sometimes struggle to tell the truth, or you're too honest. Those both could be flaws.
And a lot of times in a story, when you're learning how to write stories, your professor might say to you, well, what is this character's critical flaw? You need to have that flaw a lot of times to create motion in a story, to move a story along, because they have to have, maybe a character has to have a downfall or something they have to fight against. And their flaw normally causes them to have this need to fight against or move forward from their problem. Some find themselves on the wrong side of the law. So some of these superheroes who have been superheroes, taking care of society, doing good, helping mankind, well, now they're on the wrong side of the law. And if you're on the wrong side of the law, that means that the police are looking for you or you're likely to be put in jail. They are supposed to uphold. So wrong side of the law, they are supposed to uphold. These superheroes are supposed to, it's almost like you think about the word uphold. It's like you think about someone holding their hands up in the air. They're trying to take care of this thing. What are they taking care of? The law. So they are trying to abide by or value, or they swear an oath to take care of society, and they're having problems doing it.
And the central question emerges from all of these things: what makes a hero? You know, is it protecting people? Is it fighting for what's right, even if people get hurt? Each hero is approaching this in their own way.
Right.
So the article continues, Moore's story is enriched with hidden details, flashbacks, and subplots.
As you mentioned.
Yeah, weaving together a web of moral ambiguity, political intrigue, and philosophical introspection.
That's very complex.
Yeah, we've got a lot of words to look at in this sentence. We'll start with enrich. To enrich something is to make it richer.
Right.
Not financially, although you could use it like someone enriched themselves by selling real estate. But here we mean making something richer in detail, in levels. We're making it more kind of valuable as a learning experience to read it. Every time you read it, you're noticing something different, something new, like, oh, I didn't get this last time. So we're saying this isn't just an interesting story and then you read it and it's done. It's deep. It's got levels. It's got stuff that you can really go dig into and learn about.
Another place you see the word enriched a lot of times is on a flour bag. It'll say enriched, so it means they've added nutrients to it that are supposed to help people in their diet. There are also flashbacks and subplots. So flashbacks are when, you think of the character in your story going, I remember when I was a kid, but they don't say it. They're suddenly a kid again, and they're looking around them and remembering some very important moment in their life. A flashback takes you back in time or earlier in the story. And subplots are just what they sound like, something below the main plot. So it's not the main plot, but it's a plot that's going on just below the main plot and could become a very interesting story. In fact, a lot of subplots later on become their own comic book or so line as well.
Yeah, and all of these things, these different ways of telling stories, these details, these secondary plots, they weave together a web of moral ambiguity, political intrigue, and philosophical introspection. So let's start with ambiguity. Ambiguity means you're not quite sure. It's not clear what is going on. And moral ambiguity is it's uncertain. Who are the good guys? Who are the bad guys? Is anybody the good guy? Is anybody got a real strong moral belief system that they're following here? Or not. So you're just looking at these characters and going, wait a minute, who am I supposed to be wanting to win?
And you also have political intrigue. So political things in general tend to have intrigue. You have mysteries or like different kinds of conspiracies going on behind the lines. That's what I think about when I think about intrigue. You can also think of the adjective intriguing. If something is intriguing, well, it is very interesting. It draws you to it. So political intrigue a lot of times will draw you to it as well, in that, well, people are doing different things behind scenes, maybe to get a political figure to be president, as is the case a lot of times that we talk about in America over the last few years. That might be some form of political intrigue, or to take out a political figure as well.
And then we've got philosophical introspection. Introspection is when you're looking at your own emotions, your own mental processes, basically how you think, how you feel, why you feel that way, and looking at it in a philosophical way, asking those big questions like, what are we here for? Why do we think? What is my purpose? What is the world's purpose?
Those are deep.
Yeah, this is Dr. Manhattan would deal with a lot of this stuff in his plot line.
In his disconnected, detached plot line, right? The narrative builds toward an earth-changing revelation and a morally ambiguous ending that challenges traditional notions of heroes and morality. So the story, the narrative, builds toward. So a lot of times a story works toward something. It's making its way to something. And here I like the way that it's described. It's building toward this. It feels like it's always getting bigger and bigger, like a building is growing, being constructed. What are you building towards? Well, you're building toward an earth-changing revelation. So something that's going to change the earth. A revelation is, well, I can't think of a good description of it. Maybe I hand it to you, Pat, right now.
A revelation, it's an event or an idea that changes everything.
It reveals something. Revelation, you reveal something.
Exactly. And it suddenly just kind of shifts the way like if we suddenly learned, for example, that there were real superheroes, that would be a revelation that would change the way the world works.
Or aliens. If we had aliens, that would be an earth-changing revelation.
Indeed. Now, I'm not going to reveal what the ending is, because one thing I'll say, it's different in the comic book than it is in the movie.
Okay.
So you can watch or read both and figure out which one you prefer.
But we do know that it's a morally ambiguous one.
Yeah, meaning, again, you're like, hang on, did the right group win? Did what this person did, was this the right thing to do, or was this the wrong thing to do? Did the results justify the people who got hurt to make it happen? Those kind of questions. So you're not quite sure, like, hang on, this is challenging the traditional notion of heroes and morality. Traditional heroes, they win. They overcome all the odds, defeat the final villain,
do the good things,
slay the dragon, and they win, and everybody goes back to peace. So this is challenging it. This is saying, well, here's another way to end this story that's going to make you think, hang on, who are the heroes? And is this morally, this is the morality, it's the noun form of morals and morally and stuff like that. The way that we think about what is good, what is right, it's challenging whether that is right and making you think about it. So that is a pretty heavy article with lots of ideas. We're not finished yet. We've still got to talk about Alan Moore himself and the effects of his book, but we're going to do that and in other parts of the article. Right now, we're going to hand over to our Chinese teacher, and when we come back, we'll be saying goodbye and wrapping up.
好，那再来我们看第三段第一个句子，请看 narrative， 这里指的其实就是故事啊。好，那这整个故事叙事，它是在探索什么？探讨什么 ？Personal lives, conflict 等等等，点点点。好，那接着呢，第二个句子介绍了里面的一些人物哦。再来，我们看到第三个句子。好，里面呢有一位超级英雄，应该说他以前曾经是超级英雄，他就称为智谋者。不过后来转型了，好，他就turned into a successful businessman. 那他怎么啦？ He harbors a grand plan. 请同学把 harbors a grand plan 画起来。同学通常知道 harbor 当名词是港口的意思。那这里呢，就是他心中有这样子的一项计划。好，再来，请同学看到第四个 段落第一个句子，随着故事发展 ，as the story progresses， 那这里指的就是故事不断的发展 ，tensions rise between the superheroes， 超级英雄之间其实关系也变得有点紧张，动词搭配的是 rise， tensions rise。好，再来，请看第二个句子，有些超级英雄 find themselves on the wrong side of the law， 这个讲得非常的委婉哦。说在法律的对立面，其实指的就是他们发现自己好像有违法触法的状况。好，那怎么样的情况呢？原本他们是守护者，那么他们也必须要捍卫司法嘛。这里就讲到说 they find themselves on the wrong side of the law, they are supposed to uphold。那这里 uphold 的受词当然就是 law， 他们要去捍卫司法。好，再来，请看到最后一个段落了。最后一个段落的第一个句子 more storytelling， 这一个作家他的说故事的方式 enriched with hidden details， 有什么样的特性呢？里面充满了 enriched with， 就是里面有很多的什么 hidden details， 一些细节。flashbacks 指的就是倒叙的手法。好，以上呢就是我们针对这个单元第一天内容所做的中文讲解，谢谢大家。
So that is the article of Watchmen. That's giving us the idea of the plot. Having read that, do you now kind of feel more motivated to go and read it? Because I remember you said you hadn't.
It is very intriguing, and I definitely think that I would love this graphic novel, just like I like Lock and Key. I think graphic novels in general are probably quite fascinating to put on screen, so maybe I'll watch it first.
Yeah, definitely a good place to start. Now, we're going to learn more about Watchmen and its writer and its effects in other parts of this article, but that's all we've got for today. Thanks for joining us for English Digest. I'm Pat.
I'm Leah.
And we'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.